Deborah, we've taken a deeper look into these actual tariffs. He probably could have gone in stronger than he did. So there's a sense that perhaps Trump did pull some of those punches. But is this just the beginning?
Yeah, I think it's the beginning. And I think the real question will come on what is it that they do on Section 301, on China, on intellectual property, and what they're arguing is technology theft from the Chinese against American companies. That's really the big case. So this is really a warm-up to that larger question.
I guess the next question is, how does China respond?
I assume from the U.S. perspective, not well, because what the U.S. is hoping for is that the Chinese will back down and the Chinese will begin a negotiation with the United States, ultimately leading to outcomes that the United States finds more fair and more palatable. But I think that is going to be challenging because getting an outcome that satisfies Donald Trump in particular is going to be tricky. This is not the kind of outcome that is easy to obtain at the best of times, and particularly going to be hard to get something that satisfies Trump.
Deborah, how much of this is political?
Well, I would say most of it is political. There are obviously a lot of companies, U.S. companies and other companies, who would argue on 301 in particular that there is some substance behind it. In other words, that there have been challenges operating inside the Chinese market. So there's some substance behind it, but the timing and the scope and the sweep of likely repercussions is a large part political rather than purely economic.
Well, tell me a bit about 301. How much would it figure in the State of the Union address coming up at the end of the month?
The expectation is that it will form a key part of the State of the Union address because for the first year in office, on Donald Trump's signature issue, the one area where he has had consistent beliefs personally on trade, he's been relatively muted. He pulled the United States out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership on day one. But since then, he's done very few things actually on trade until now. And so the argument that you can make is that the washers decision, the solar panels decision, is the beginning of his independence on trade and the beginning of his protectionist rhetoric turning into reality on the ground. And I suspect that we're ramping up to something much bigger. He can't sort of say, well, I've done everything I intended to do with a decision on solar panels and washing machines, because that's not really playing to the arguments that he's been making for all of his campaign and then his first year in office. That's not sufficient to match the rhetoric that he's been making.